Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a busy intersection during rush hour. Cars honking, people shouting, sirens wailing in the distance. Your phone buzzes with urgent messages, your mind races through tomorrow's deadlines, and somewhere in the chaos, you realize you've lost yourself completely. Sound familiar? This is the modern paradox we all face. We desperately crave balance, that elusive state of inner peace and clarity, yet we seem to be spinning faster and faster in life's relentless whirlwind. We chase after external solutions meditation retreats, digital detoxes, self-help book shopping. They'll deliver us from the chaos. But what if the answer isn't about escaping the storm, but learning to dance in the rain? The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature that we've somehow forgotten in our age of infinite distractions. They recognize that balance isn't a destination you arrive at, it's a way of seeing the world. Epictetus, a philosopher who knew suffering intimately, he spent years as a slave before gaining his freedom, discovered that true equilibrium comes not from controlling our circumstances, but from mastering our responses to them. Think about the last time you felt genuinely balanced. Was it when everything in your life was perfect? Probably not. More likely, it was a moment when you felt clear about what mattered, when you could distinguish between what deserved your energy and what didn't. This clarity isn't magical, it's the result of what the Stoics called proper judgment. Here's where it gets interesting. Every day, we're bombarded with thousands of pieces of information, experiences, and stimuli. Our brains are constantly making judgments about what's important, what's threatening, what deserves our attention. But most of us have never learned to examine these judgments critically. We react automatically, letting our emotions and impulses drive our responses, then wonder why we feel so scattered and overwhelmed. The Stoics had a different approach. They treated their minds like gardeners treat soil, constantly tending, filtering, and cultivating. They understood that the quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by how you interpret what happens to you. This isn't about positive thinking or denial. It's about developing what we might call philosophical hygiene, the practice of regularly examining and refining your mental frameworks. Consider this. When you receive criticism at work, is it automatically a personal attack, or could it be valuable feedback? When traffic makes you late, is it a catastrophe that ruins your day, or simply an inconvenience that tests your patience? The events themselves are neutral. It's your interpretation that gives them power over your emotional state. The path to balance begins with recognizing that most of our suffering comes not from external circumstances, but from our distorted judgments about those circumstances. We amplify minor inconveniences into major crises. We catastrophize uncertain outcomes, and we attach our sense of worth to things completely outside our control. No wonder we feel unbalanced. We're living in a house of mirrors where every reflection is warped by our unchecked assumptions and reactions. But here's the liberating truth. Once you understand that your judgments are the primary source of your turbulence, you also realize that you have the power to change them. Now that we've established that our judgments shape our reality, let's dive deeper into how this actually works in practice. The Stoics didn't just theorize about balance, they developed concrete tools for achieving it, tools that are surprisingly relevant to our hyper-connected, always-on modern lives. The first step is learning to distinguish between what Epictetus called what is up to us and what is not up to us. This sounds simple, but it's revolutionary when you really grasp it. Your colleague's mood, the weather, the stock market, your boss's decisions, even your own reputation, none of these are truly under your control. What is under your control? Your responses, your choices, your values, and most importantly, your judgments about everything else. Here's where most people get stuck. They spend enormous amounts of mental energy trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable, while neglecting the one thing they can actually influence: their own thinking. It's like trying to steer a ship by yelling at the wind instead of adjusting the sails. Let me share a practical example. Sarah, a marketing director I know, used to arrive at work each morning already stressed about her team's productivity, worried about client reactions to campaigns, and anxious about her upcoming performance review. She was exhausting herself trying to control outcomes that were largely beyond her influence. When she started applying Stoic principles, she shifted her focus. Instead of obsessing over whether clients would love the campaign, she concentrated on ensuring her team had done their best work. Instead of worrying about her review, she focused on performing her duties with integrity and skill. The transformation wasn't immediate, but within months, Sarah noticed something remarkable. She felt more balanced, not because her external circumstances had improved, but because she was no longer wasting energy on things outside her control. Paradoxically, this shift actually made her more effective at work. When you're not constantly anxious about outcomes, you can focus better on the process. This brings us to a crucial insight. True balance isn't about having everything go your way. It's about being equally prepared for things to go well or poorly, and maintaining your equilibrium either way. The Stoics call this preferred indifference: external things that we might naturally prefer, health over sickness, wealth over poverty, but which don't determine our fundamental well-being. Think about the people you know who seem genuinely balanced. They're probably not the ones whose lives are perfect, but rather those who handle both success and setbacks with grace. They've learned what the Stoics knew, that your character and your peace of mind are independent of your circumstances. But here's where it gets practical. How do you actually develop this kind of judgment? The Stoics recommended daily practices that we can easily adapt to modern life. Each evening, spend a few minutes reviewing your day. When did you feel unbalanced? What triggered those moments? Were you trying to control something outside your influence? Were you catastrophizing a minor setback? Were you making assumptions about other people's intentions? This isn't about self-criticism, it's about developing awareness. Once you start noticing patterns in your thinking, you can begin to intervene. When you catch yourself spiraling about a situation, pause and ask, is this something I can actually control? If not, what can I control in this situation? The beautiful thing about this approach is that it doesn't require you to become emotionally numb or indifferent to life. You can still care deeply about your work, your relationships, and your goals. The difference is that you're no longer held hostage by outcomes. You invest your energy in the process, not the results. This shift in perspective creates what the Stoics called eustathia, a kind of stable, unshakable tranquility that comes from within rather than from external circumstances. It's not the absence of challenges or difficulties, but the presence of wisdom in how you meet them. So here we are, having explored the mechanics of judgment and the power of focusing on what we can control. But there's one final piece to this puzzle that transforms everything we've discussed from mere philosophy into lived wisdom. The recognition that balance isn't a static state, it's a dynamic practice. Most people think of balance like a tightrope walker, perfectly still and controlled. But watch a skilled tightrope walker closely, and you'll notice they're never actually still. They're constantly making tiny adjustments, responding to the subtle shifts in wind, the natural sway of the rope, the rhythm of their own movement. Their balance comes not from rigidity, but from fluid responsiveness. This is the secret the Stoics discovered. True balance is not about eliminating the chaos of life, but about developing the skill to navigate it gracefully. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice your judgment. Every setback becomes a chance to test your principles. Every moment of uncertainty becomes a laboratory for wisdom. Consider Marcus Aurelius writing his Meditations while campaigning on the brutal frontiers of the Roman Empire. He wasn't seeking balance in some peaceful monastery. He was finding it in the midst of war, politics, and the immense responsibilities of ruling an empire. His famous words, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength," weren't written in comfort, but in the crucible of real-world pressure. This brings us to perhaps the most profound insight. The very things that seem to threaten your balance, stress, uncertainty, conflict, loss are actually the raw materials from which genuine balance is forged. Without challenges, there would be no need for wisdom. Without difficulties, there would be no opportunity to develop resilience. Think about the strongest people you know. Their strength didn't come from avoiding difficulties, but from learning to meet them with clarity and purpose. They've developed what we might call philosophical muscle, the ability to maintain their center regardless of external turbulence. But here's what makes this approach truly liberating. Once you understand that balance comes from within, you stop being a victim of circumstance. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's moods, economic fluctuations, or unexpected events. You become what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a fortress of tranquility that no external force can breach. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or disconnected. Quite the opposite. When you're not constantly reactive to external pressures, you become more present, more engaged, more capable of genuine connection and meaningful action. You can love without clinging, strive without desperation, care without anxiety. The irony is beautiful. By accepting that you can't control most of what happens to you, you gain tremendous power over the one thing that truly matters. So you respond. By embracing the inevitability of change and uncertainty, you find a stability that no external circumstance can shake. So if you seek balance, stop looking for it in your circumstances. Stop waiting for life to become easier, for people to be more reasonable, for the world to make more sense. Instead, turn your attention inward to the one domain where you have complete sovereignty, your own mind. The path to balance isn't about perfecting your external world, it's about perfecting your response to whatever world you find yourself in. And here's the remarkable thing. Once you master this art, you discover that you've been carrying the very thing you were searching for all along. Balance isn't something you achieve, it's something you are, something you've always been, waiting patiently beneath the noise and confusion for you to remember. The Stoics were right. If you truly seek balance, you won't find it by changing your circumstances, you'll find it by changing how you see them. And in that shift of perception lies not just balance, but freedom itself.